The golden autumn leaves danced outside the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Queen Consort Camilla Ashworth adjusted her pearl necklace nervously. She had been married to King Charles for 3 years now, but the weight of royal expectations still felt heavy on her shoulders. Today's family meeting would determine the future direction of the monarchy, and she knew that her stepdaughter-in-law, Princess Catherine, would be her biggest challenge. Camilla walked through the ornate hallways, her heels clicking against the marble floors. The palace staff bowed respectfully as she passed, but she could sense the tension in the air. Everyone knew about the growing friction between the two most powerful women in the royal family. It wasn't personal hatred, but rather a clash of visions for what the monarchy should become in the modern era. Princess Catherine, married to Prince William for 8 years, had quickly become the people's favorite royal. Her grace, intelligence, and natural ability to connect with ordinary citizens made her a powerful force within the family. She believed the monarchy needed to modernize quickly, embrace social media, and focus on younger generations. Her charitable work with mental health awareness and children's education had earned her widespread respect both in Britain and internationally. Camilla, on the other hand, represented tradition and careful, measured change. Having lived through decades of royal scandals and public relations disasters, she understood the importance of maintaining dignity and protocol. She worried that Catherine's rapid modernization efforts might damage the institution's carefully built reputation. The monarchy had survived for over 1,000 years by adapting slowly and maintaining its mystique. As Camilla entered the blue drawing room, she found Catherine already seated at the mahogany table, reviewing documents with intense concentration. The younger woman looked up and smiled politely, but Camilla could see the steel behind her warm brown eyes. William sat beside his wife, his jaw set with determination. He had inherited his father's sense of duty, but also his mother's rebellious spirit when it came to challenging outdated traditions. "Good morning, Camilla," Catherine said, rising gracefully from her chair. Her navy blue dress was perfectly tailored, and her hair was styled in an elegant chignon that emphasized her natural beauty. "I trust you've had time to review the proposal for the Youth Engagement Initiative?" Camilla nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "I have, and I must say, some aspects concern me greatly. The idea of having royal family members participate in reality television programs, even for charitable purposes, goes against everything we've worked to build." William leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "With respect, Camilla, the world has changed dramatically. Young people don't read newspapers or watch traditional news broadcasts. They get their information from social media, streaming platforms, and interactive content. If we want to remain relevant to future generations, we need to meet them where they are." The tension in the room was palpable as the three royals faced each other across the polished table. Outside, the London morning was crisp and clear, but inside the palace, storm clouds were gathering. This wasn't just a disagreement about public relations strategies. It was a fundamental battle for the soul of the British monarchy. Catherine opened her leather portfolio and spread out several charts and photographs. "Look at these engagement numbers," she said, pointing to colorful graphs. "When I posted that video about mental health awareness last month, it reached 12 million people in the first week. That's more than any traditional royal appearance or speech has reached in years." The comments were overwhelmingly positive, with thousands of people sharing their own stories and seeking help. Camilla studied the papers, but remained unconvinced. "Numbers aren't everything, Catherine. The monarchy's power comes from its mystery and dignity. When we become too accessible, too ordinary, we lose the special quality that makes people respect us. There's a reason the Queen Mother was beloved for decades. She maintained her grace and distance while still showing compassion. But the Queen Mother lived in a different era," William interjected, his voice rising slightly with passion. "She didn't have to compete with Instagram influencers and YouTube celebrities for young people's attention. She didn't have to worry about her relevance being questioned by Parliament every time the budget came up for review. The monarchy today faces challenges that previous generations never imagined. Camilla felt a flash of irritation at what she perceived as disrespect for royal tradition. The challenges may be different, but the principles remain the same. We are not entertainers or social media personalities. We are the constitutional monarchy of the United Kingdom, and that comes with certain responsibilities and standards that cannot be compromised. Catherine leaned back in her chair, choosing her words carefully. She respected Camilla as William's stepmother and as queen consort, but she couldn't allow outdated thinking to hold back progress that could benefit millions of people. I understand your concerns about maintaining dignity, and I share them, but I think we could be both dignified and accessible. The young mother struggling with postpartum depression who watches my mental health video doesn't see me as less royal because I spoke honestly about psychological well-being. She sees me as someone who cares about her struggles and offers hope. The conversation continued for over an hour, with each side presenting their arguments passionately, but respectfully. Camilla worried about the long-term consequences of too much change too quickly. She had seen how previous attempts at modernization had backfired, creating scandals that dominated headlines for months. Her approach was cautious and methodical, based on decades of experience navigating royal protocols and public expectations. Catherine and William, however, felt urgency about connecting with younger generations before it was too late. They had commissioned several studies showing declining support for the monarchy among people under 35, and they believed bold action was necessary to reverse this trend. They weren't advocating for abandoning all traditions, but rather for thoughtful evolution that preserved the monarchy's essence while making it relevant to contemporary life. As the morning wore on, it became clear that neither side would easily compromise. Camilla excused herself to attend to other royal duties, but she promised to continue the discussion later. After she left, Catherine and William sat in silence for several minutes, both feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. "She's not wrong about the risks," Catherine finally said, gathering her papers slowly. "Change is dangerous, and we can make mistakes that damage the institution permanently. But doing nothing is also dangerous. If we become irrelevant to entire generations of British citizens, what's the point of our existence?" William nodded, understanding the complexity of their situation. As future king, he felt the burden of making decisions that would affect not only his own reign, but also the monarchy his children would inherit. He wanted to honor the traditions his grandmother had maintained while preparing the institution for a rapidly changing world. "We'll find a way forward," he said, taking Catherine's hand. "We have to. Too much depends on getting this right." That afternoon, Camilla met with her private secretary and several senior palace advisors to discuss the morning's conversation. She valued their counsel and wanted to understand all perspectives before making any final decisions. The advisors were divided in their opinions, with some supporting Catherine's modernization efforts and others agreeing with Camilla's cautious approach. Meanwhile, Catherine spent the afternoon visiting a youth center in East London, where she engaged with teenagers about their hopes and concerns for the future. Their enthusiasm for her presence and their genuine interest in discussing serious topics reinforced her belief that the monarchy could be a positive force in their lives if presented in the right way. The battle lines were drawn, but all three royals understood that their ultimate goal was the same: ensuring the monarchy's survival and continued service to the British people. How they achieved that goal, however, remained a source of significant disagreement. As evening approached, each of them retreated to their private quarters to reflect on the day's discussions and plan their next moves. The palace staff noticed the tension, but maintained their professional discretion, understanding that royal family dynamics often involve passionate debates about important issues. The outcome of this royal battle for influence would determine not only the monarchy's immediate future, but also its legacy for generations to come. With strong personalities, deeply held beliefs, and genuine concern for the institution's well-being on all sides, the resolution would require wisdom compromise, and perhaps most importantly, a shared vision of what the British monarchy could become in the 21st century. The first round of discussions had ended without clear resolution, but it was only the beginning of a complex struggle that would test the bonds of family loyalty against the demands of institutional evolution. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities for finding common ground between tradition and progress. Hashtag a royal battle for influence. Part 2. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as King Charles reviewed the reports from his private secretary. The ongoing tension between Camilla and Catherine had reached his attention, and he knew he needed to address the situation before it affected the family's public image or internal harmony. As someone who had experienced his own struggles with modernizing the monarchy during his decades as heir apparent, he understood both sides of the current debate. Catherine arrived at Windsor early, having driven herself in her Range Rover rather than using the official royal convoy. This small act of independence was typical of her approach to royal life, maintaining tradition while asserting her own personality and values. She wore a simple but elegant gray suit, and her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail that made her look younger than her 32 years. She found Charles in his study, surrounded by newspapers, official documents, and correspondence from various government officials. The king looked up from his reading and smiled warmly at his daughter-in-law. Despite the current family tensions, he had always appreciated Catherine's dedication to her royal duties and her genuine affection for William and their children. "Good morning, Your Majesty," Catherine said, curtsying briefly before taking the offered seat across from his desk. The study smelled of leather-bound books and the fresh flowers that staff replaced daily. Through the tall windows, she could see gardeners tending to the rose bushes that Charles had personally designed and planted over the years. "Catherine, my dear, I think we can dispense with formalities this morning," Charles said, setting aside his papers. "I've asked you here because I'm concerned about the growing division within our family regarding the monarchy's future direction. I understand there was quite a spirited discussion yesterday." Catherine nodded, choosing her words carefully. She respected her father-in-law's position and experience, but she also felt strongly about her vision for the monarchy's evolution. "Your Majesty, I believe we're at a critical moment in the monarchy's history. The choices we make now will determine whether the institution remains relevant and valued by future generations of British citizens." Charles leaned back in his chair, studying Catherine's face. He could see the passion and determination that had made her such an effective royal, but he also sensed the frustration she felt about the resistance to change. "Tell me more about your specific concerns and proposals. I want to understand your perspective fully before we discuss potential solutions." For the next hour, Catherine presented her detailed analysis of public opinion surveys, social media engagement metrics, and demographic studies showing declining royal support among younger citizens. She explained her belief that the monarchy needed to embrace digital communication, tackle contemporary social issues more directly, and demonstrate relevance to people's daily lives. The traditional approach of ceremonial appearances and formal speeches isn't connecting with people under 40, Catherine explained, showing Charles several charts on her tablet. "But when I share personal stories about parenting challenges or mental health struggles, the response is extraordinary. People feel seen and heard, and they develop a genuine emotional connection to the royal family." Charles listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting additional details about specific proposals. He found himself impressed by the thoroughness of Catherine's research and the thoughtfulness of her approach. At the same time, he understood Camilla's concerns about moving too quickly and potentially damaging the monarchy's carefully maintained dignity. Meanwhile, across the castle grounds, Camilla was meeting with Lady Patricia Morrison, her closest advisor and friend from her pre-royal days. Lady Patricia had served in various government roles and understood both the political implications of royal actions and the importance of public perception in maintaining institutional support. The problem isn't Catherine's intentions, Camilla explained as they walked through the private gardens. She genuinely cares about helping people and connecting with the public. But she doesn't fully understand how quickly things can go wrong when we step too far outside traditional boundaries. One misinterpreted comment, one photograph taken out of context, and we could face a crisis that takes years to resolve. Lady Patricia nodded thoughtfully. But surely there's middle ground between Catherine's proposals and complete resistance to change? The monarchy has always evolved gradually while maintaining its core identity. Perhaps the challenge is finding the right pace and the right balance. Camilla paused beside a fountain, watching the water cascade over carved stone figures that had stood in the same spot for over 2 centuries. That's exactly what I've been trying to explain. Evolution, not revolution. We need to honor the wisdom of previous generations while carefully adapting to contemporary needs. Catherine seems to want to transform everything at once. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Prince William, who had been attending meetings with Commonwealth representatives all morning. He looked tired but determined as he approached the 2 women, and Camilla could see the stress of recent family tensions in his bearing. "Camilla, I hope you don't mind the interruption," William said, his tone respectful but serious. "I want to speak with you about yesterday's discussion and see if we might find some common ground moving forward." The 3 of them continued walking through the gardens as William explained his perspective on the monarchy's challenges and opportunities. He emphasized his deep respect for royal traditions while arguing that selective modernization was essential for institutional survival. His approach was more measured than Catherine's, but still emphasized the urgency of connecting with younger generations. "I'm not advocating for abandoning protocol or dignity," William said as they reached a secluded bench where they could speak privately. "But I am convinced that we need to show more of our human side while maintaining our royal duties. People today expect authenticity and genuine connection, not just formal appearances and scripted speeches." Camilla listened carefully to William's arguments, recognizing the sincerity of his concerns while maintaining her own reservations about rapid change. She had lived through enough royal crises to understand how quickly public opinion could shift and how easily well-intentioned actions could be misinterpreted or exploited by critics. "William, I understand your concerns, and I want to support you and Catherine in your royal roles," Camilla said finally. "My worry is that once we cross certain lines, we can't easily return to our previous position. The monarchy's strength has always been its consistency and reliability, qualities that could be undermined by too much change too quickly." As the afternoon progressed, the various family members continued their discussions in different combinations and settings. Charles spoke with both William and Camilla separately, trying to understand each perspective fully while considering the broader implications of different approaches to royal modernization. Catherine, meanwhile, received a call from her private secretary informing her about a developing situation that would test her approach to royal communication. A young mother in Manchester had written a heartbreaking letter about her struggle with postpartum depression and her feeling of isolation during the pandemic lockdowns. The letter had been forwarded through official channels, but Catherine's team suggested responding personally rather than sending a standard royal acknowledgement. This situation presented exactly the kind of opportunity Catherine believed the monarchy should embrace: a chance to provide meaningful support to a struggling citizen while demonstrating the royal family's genuine concern for people's well-being. However, she knew that any response would be scrutinized by media and potentially criticized by those who preferred more formal royal protocols. After consulting with her team, Catherine decided to arrange a private video call with the mother, offering emotional support and connecting her with professional resources for postpartum depression. She also planned to use the interaction, with the mother's permission, as the basis for a broader social media campaign about mental health support for new parents. When Catherine informed Charles about her planned response, he saw it as an opportunity to test different approaches to royal engagement. He suggested that both Catherine and Camilla develop responses to the situation, allowing the family to compare the effectiveness and public reception of different communication styles. Camilla's approach involved a formal but warm letter from the Queen Consort expressing sympathy and offering to connect the mother with established charitable organizations that provided support for new parents. She also arranged for a modest financial contribution to a local support group through one of her official patronages. The contrast between the two approaches highlighted the fundamental differences in their philosophies about royal engagement. Catherine's response was more personal, immediate, and visible to the public, while Camilla's was more traditional, private, and channeled through established institutions. As evening approached, the family gathered for dinner at Windsor Castle, where the conversation carefully avoided the day's tensions while maintaining the warm relationships that had always characterized their personal interactions. Despite their professional disagreements, they remained a close family united by shared values and genuine affection for one another. Charles observed the dynamics around the dinner table, noting how William supported Catherine's initiatives while respecting Camilla's experience and wisdom. He also saw how Catherine and Camilla maintained their mutual respect despite their philosophical differences about royal modernization. After dinner, Charles requested a private meeting with both women to discuss potential compromises and collaborative approaches. He had spent the day reflecting on their various arguments and considering how the monarchy might benefit from combining their different strengths and perspectives. "I believe we're facing a false choice between tradition and modernization," Charles said as they settled in his private sitting room. "Perhaps our challenge is finding ways to honor our heritage while embracing new opportunities to serve the British people more effectively." The evening's discussion proved more productive than previous conversations, with all three royals beginning to identify areas where their visions overlapped and could potentially be combined. Catherine's passion for direct public engagement could be balanced with Camilla's emphasis on institutional dignity, while William's strategic thinking could help identify the most promising opportunities for careful innovation. However, significant challenges remained, and the next phase of their discussions would determine whether they could develop a unified approach or whether their differences would continue to create tension within the royal family. The stakes were high, not just for their personal relationships, but for the monarchy's future role in British society and its relationship with the Commonwealth nations. #A royal battle for influence. Part 3, the first test of the royal family's competing approaches, came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after their Windsor Castle discussions, news broke about a devastating flood in northern England that had displaced hundreds of families and destroyed several small communities. The disaster presented both an opportunity for meaningful royal engagement and a potential minefield for public relations mistakes. Catherine learned about the flooding while reviewing her morning briefings at Kensington Palace. The images from the affected areas were heartbreaking. Elderly residents evacuated from care homes, children standing in muddy water outside their ruined schools, and volunteers desperately trying to save what they could from damaged homes. Her immediate instinct was to travel to the region immediately and provide hands-on assistance while documenting the experience for social media to raise awareness and encourage donations. Camilla, however, was already implementing her preferred response through established channels. She had contacted the Lord Lieutenant of the affected county to arrange formal visits to emergency shelters and coordination with local authorities. Her approach emphasized working within existing structures and providing support without creating additional burdens for emergency responders who were already overwhelmed. The differences in their styles became apparent when both women arrived in the flood zone within hours of each other, though they had planned their visits independently. Catherine drove herself to a community center, serving as an emergency shelter, where she immediately began helping serve meals to displaced families and sitting with children while their parents dealt with insurance representatives and housing officials. Her genuine warmth and ability to connect with people in crisis was evident as she listened to individual stories of loss and resilience. A young father named Michael told her how he had lost his carpentry tools in the flood, threatening his ability to support his family. Catherine made note of his situation and promised to help connect him with resources for replacing his equipment. She's just like a normal person, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson told reporters after speaking with Catherine. She held my hand and really listened when I told her about my cat, who got lost in the flood. She even helped me post about him on Facebook to try to find him. Catherine's team documented these interactions carefully, sharing updates on social media that showed the royal family's immediate response to the crisis while encouraging public donations to relief efforts. Her posts quickly went viral, generating significant financial contributions and volunteer support for the affected communities. Meanwhile, Camilla's visit followed more traditional protocols. She toured the emergency facilities with local officials, met with volunteer coordinators and first responders, and attended a briefing about long-term recovery planning. Her conversations were more formal, but demonstrated deep knowledge about disaster recovery processes and the challenges facing rural communities. At the main emergency command center, Camilla spoke with the regional emergency director about lessons learned from previous flooding events and discussed potential infrastructure improvements that could prevent similar disasters in the future. Her questions revealed extensive preparation and genuine understanding of complex policy issues. The Queen Consort really knows her stuff, the emergency director told his colleagues after the visit. She asked about drainage systems, flood barriers, and climate change adaptation strategies. She's clearly done her homework and understands the bigger picture beyond just this immediate crisis. Camilla's approach generated less immediate media attention, but her meetings resulted in concrete commitments for future flood prevention measures and enhanced emergency response capabilities. She also arranged for several of her charitable patronages to provide ongoing support for community rebuilding efforts. The contrasting styles of engagement created an unexpected media narrative about the two faces of royal service. Some commentators praise Catherine's empathy and accessibility, while others emphasize the importance of Camilla's institutional knowledge and systematic approach to addressing root causes of problems. William found himself in the difficult position of supporting both his wife and his stepmother while managing the public perception of apparent division within the royal family. He decided to visit the flood zone himself, attempting to combine elements of both approaches in his own engagement with the crisis. During his visit, William spent time with individual families like Catherine had done, but he also participated in strategic planning sessions like Camilla. He helped load sandbags alongside volunteers while also meeting with government ministers about longer-term recovery funding. His approach demonstrated that the different styles could potentially be complementary rather than competitive. However, the real test came when a critical incident occurred during the royal visits. A temporary dam protecting one of the emergency shelters began showing signs of failure, potentially threatening hundreds of evacuated residents with additional flooding. The situation required immediate decision-making and coordination between royal representatives and emergency officials. Catherine was at the threatened shelter when the emergency alert came through. Her first instinct was to help evacuate vulnerable residents, working alongside volunteers to move elderly and disabled people to higher ground. She stayed calm under pressure and used her platform to communicate directly with the public about the developing situation, providing real-time updates that helped coordinate additional volunteer response. Camilla was in meetings with regional officials when the crisis escalated. She immediately shifted into coordination mode, working with authorities to secure additional emergency resources and facilitating communication between different agencies involved in the response. Her established relationships with government officials and emergency services proved invaluable in mobilizing rapid support. The incident was resolved successfully without injuries, but it highlighted both the strengths and potential weaknesses of the different royal approaches. Catherine's direct involvement had inspired volunteers and provided crucial public communication, while Camilla's institutional connections had enabled rapid official response and resource allocation. In the aftermath of the flooding crisis, King Charles called for a comprehensive review of the royal family's emergency response capabilities and public engagement strategies. He recognized that both approaches had contributed to successful outcomes, but he wanted to develop more coordinated protocols for future crises. The review process brought together communications experts, emergency management professionals, and constitutional scholars to analyze the effectiveness of different royal engagement styles. Their findings suggested that the monarchy could benefit from developing flexible response frameworks that allowed for both immediate public engagement and systematic institutional support. Catherine felt vindicated by the positive public response to her direct involvement in the crisis, but she also recognized the value of Camilla's more structured approach. "I learned a lot about the importance of working within established systems," she admitted during one family discussion. "My instinct is always to jump in and help directly, but I can see how that might sometimes interfere with professional emergency response efforts." Camilla, in turn, acknowledged the power of Catherine's communication style and personal engagement. "The public response to your social media updates was remarkable," she told Catherine. "You generated more volunteer support and donations in a few hours than our traditional approaches usually achieve in weeks. That's a valuable capability that shouldn't be dismissed." The flood response experience began to shift the dynamic between the two women from competition to potential collaboration. They started discussing how their different strengths might be combined more effectively, rather than viewing their approaches as mutually exclusive alternatives. William played an increasingly important role in facilitating these discussions, helping both women understand each other's perspectives while developing strategies for more integrated royal engagement. His own experience during the flood crisis had convinced him that the monarchy needed both the human connection Catherine provided and the institutional effectiveness Camilla brought to complex challenges. However, new tensions emerged as media coverage of the flood response focused heavily on the apparent differences in royal approaches. Some commentators began speculating about deeper conflicts within the family, questioning whether the monarchy could present a unified public face while accommodating such different styles of engagement. The speculation intensified when a leaked palace memo suggested that there had been animated discussions about royal protocols during emergency situations. Although the memo's contents were relatively mundane, its existence fueled rumors about more serious disagreements between Catherine and Camilla. Both women found themselves under increased media scrutiny, with photographers and reporters analyzing their every interaction for signs of tension or conflict. The pressure affected their public appearances and created additional stress during an already challenging period of institutional evolution. Charles recognized that the family needed to address the media speculation directly rather than allowing it to grow through continued silence. He scheduled a major interview with the BBC to discuss the monarchy's approach to public service and emergency response, hoping to reframe the narrative around collaboration rather than conflict. The interview preparation process required intensive coordination between Catherine, Camilla, and their respective communications teams. They needed to present a unified message while acknowledging the legitimate differences in their approaches to royal engagement. As they worked together on developing key messages and talking points, both women began to appreciate more fully the complexity of each other's positions. Catherine gained insight into the institutional pressures and historical precedents that informed Camilla's careful approach, while Camilla developed greater appreciation for the genuine connections Catherine had built with younger generations of citizens. The upcoming interview would provide an opportunity to demonstrate whether they had truly found common ground or whether their differences remained too significant to bridge effectively. The stakes were high, not just for their personal relationship, but for public confidence in the monarchy's ability to evolve while maintaining its essential character and effectiveness. Hashtag a royal battle for influence. Part for the morning of the BBC interview dawned gray and drizzly, matching the nervous energy that filled Buckingham Palace. King Charles, Queen Consort Camilla, and Princess Catherine sat together in the blue drawing room, making final preparations for what would become one of the most significant royal interviews in decades. The questions would focus on their response to the recent flooding crisis, but everyone understood that the real subject was the future direction of the British monarchy. Catherine wore a deep blue dress that conveyed both authority and approachability, while Camilla had chosen an elegant burgundy suit that reflected her more formal approach to royal duties. Both women had spent hours with their communications teams, rehearsing key messages and preparing for potentially difficult questions about their apparently different philosophies regarding public engagement. "Remember, we're not here to defend our differences," Charles reminded them as they reviewed their notes one final time. "We're here to show how those differences can actually strengthen the monarchy's ability to serve the British people effectively." The interviewer, renowned journalist Sarah Mitchell, had built her reputation on asking tough but fair questions about sensitive political and social issues. She understood the significance of this interview and had prepared extensively to explore the real dynamics within the royal family while respecting the constraints of constitutional monarchy. As the cameras began rolling, Mitchell opened with questions about the flood response, allowing each royal to describe their personal experiences and observations. Catherine spoke passionately about the family she had met and the resilience she had witnessed, while Camilla discussed the systematic coordination efforts and long-term recovery planning that would be necessary. "Your Royal Highness," Mitchell said, turning to Catherine, "your social media posts during the flood crisis generated enormous public response. Some people have suggested this represents a new kind of royal engagement that's more direct and personal than traditional approaches. How do you respond to that characterization?" Catherine leaned forward slightly, her voice confident but measured. "I believe the British people deserve to see their royal family as real human beings who genuinely care about their struggles and celebrations. When I meet someone who's lost their home in a flood or is struggling with mental health challenges, my first instinct is to connect with them as one person to another, not just as a representative of an institution." She paused, glancing at Camilla with genuine warmth. "But I've also learned from the Queen Consort's experience and wisdom that individual compassion must be balanced with systematic support and institutional effectiveness. The monarchy serves the people best when it combines heart and head, emotion and strategy." Mitchell then turned to Camilla. "Your Majesty, you've taken a more traditional approach to royal duties, working primarily through established institutions and formal protocols. Do you believe there's still a place for that approach in an era of social media and direct communication?" Camilla smiled, displaying the confidence that came from decades of public service. "Absolutely. While I deeply admire Catherine's ability to connect with people personally, I've seen how important it is to work within existing systems and institutions. When we faced that potential dam failure during the flood crisis, it wasn't social media that mobilized the emergency engineering teams. It was established relationships with government officials and emergency services." She gestured gracefully toward Catherine. "But I've also learned from watching Catherine that these formal systems work better when they're combined with genuine human connection and public engagement. Her ability to inspire volunteers and donations created resources that our traditional approaches alone couldn't have generated." The interview continued for nearly an hour, with Mitchell exploring various aspects of royal modernization while allowing both women to demonstrate their mutual respect and growing collaboration. The breakthrough moment came when she asked directly about the tensions that had been reported in the media. "There have been suggestions of conflict between your different approaches," Mitchell said. "How accurate are those reports?" William, who had been quietly observing most of the interview, chose this moment to speak. "Sarah, I think what the media has characterized as conflict is actually something much more valuable: healthy debate about how we can best serve the British people. Catherine and Camilla don't agree about everything, and that's actually a strength, not a weakness." He looked at both women with obvious affection and pride. "My wife brings passion, innovation, and incredible empathy to her royal duties. My stepmother brings wisdom, experience, and deep understanding of how institutions really work. When they combine their approaches, as they did during the flood crisis, the results are more powerful than either could achieve alone." Catherine nodded enthusiastically. What William said is exactly right. The monarchy isn't stronger when we all think exactly alike. It's stronger when we bring different perspectives and skills to our shared commitment to public service. Camilla has taught me so much about strategic thinking and long-term planning, while I hope I've helped her see new ways to connect with younger generations. Camilla reached over and touched Catherine's hand briefly. You have, my dear, more than you know. Watching your genuine interactions with people has reminded me why I wanted to serve in the first place. The protocols and procedures are important, but they're only valuable if they help us make a real difference in people's lives. The gesture was small, but deeply meaningful, demonstrating to viewers that whatever tensions had existed between the two women had evolved into genuine mutual respect and affection. The moment went viral within hours of the interview's broadcast, with social media users praising the authenticity of their relationship. As the interview concluded, Mitchell asked about the monarchy's future direction. Charles provided the closing response, speaking about the institution's ability to evolve while maintaining its core values and constitutional role. The British monarchy has survived for over 1,000 years because it has always adapted to changing circumstances while preserving what's most essential about its character and purpose, he said. What you've seen today is that adaptation in action, not conflict or division, but healthy evolution that combines respect for tradition with openness to new ideas and approaches. The interview's reception exceeded all expectations. Public opinion surveys showed significant increases in support for the monarchy, particularly among younger demographics who had previously been skeptical about royal relevance. The combination of Catherine's accessibility and Camilla's dignity had created a more complete picture of royal service that resonated across different age groups and social backgrounds. More importantly for the family itself, the interview process had helped Catherine and Camilla develop a much stronger working relationship. They began collaborating regularly on joint initiatives that combined their different strengths, creating more effective and comprehensive approaches to royal engagement. One of their most successful joint projects emerged from the flood crisis experience. They developed a new royal emergency response protocol that balanced immediate public engagement with systematic institutional support. Catherine would typically provide direct assistance and public communication during crisis situations, while Camilla would coordinate with government officials and long-term recovery planning. The protocol was first tested during a major industrial accident 6 months later, and its effectiveness impressed both emergency management professionals and the general public. Catherine's real-time social media updates helped coordinate volunteer response and maintain public morale, while Camilla's work with regulatory agencies ensured that safety violations were addressed and similar accidents prevented in the future. William played an increasingly central role in facilitating collaboration between his wife and stepmother, but he also began developing his own distinctive approach to royal duties that incorporated lessons from both women. His combination of Catherine's emotional intelligence and Camilla's strategic thinking positioned him well for his future role as king. The transformation in royal family dynamics had broader implications beyond their personal relationships. Parliament and government ministers expressed increased confidence in the monarchy's ability to adapt to contemporary challenges while maintaining institutional stability. Commonwealth nations also responded positively to the more diverse and flexible approaches to royal engagement. Public trust in the monarchy reached levels not seen in decades, with approval ratings climbing steadily as people observed the genuine collaboration and mutual respect within the royal family. The perception that the royals were working together effectively to address real problems made the institution seem more relevant and valuable to ordinary citizens. As autumn turned to winter, the three royals reflected on how much had changed since their initial disagreements about modernization strategies. What had begun as a battle for influence had evolved into a collaborative approach that strengthened the monarchy's ability to serve effectively in a complex and rapidly changing world. Catherine continued to champion innovative approaches to public engagement, but she now did so within frameworks that honored royal traditions and institutional wisdom. Camilla maintained her emphasis on systematic and strategic thinking, but she incorporated more direct public communication and personal engagement in her royal duties. Their partnership became a model for how institutions can evolve without losing their essential character, demonstrating that tradition and innovation need not be opposing forces, but can instead be mutually reinforcing elements of effective leadership. The royal battle for influence had ultimately produced not a winner and loser, but a stronger and more capable monarchy that could draw on the best insights and approaches from different generations and perspectives. The British people were the ultimate beneficiaries of this evolution, served by royals who had learned to combine compassion with competence, accessibility with dignity, and innovation with wisdom. As the year drew to a close, King Charles looked back on the challenges and transformations his family had experienced with pride and optimism. The monarchy had not only survived the tensions between different approaches to royal service, but had emerged stronger and more unified than before. The future looked bright for an institution that had proven once again its ability to adapt and thrive while staying true to its fundamental purpose of service to the nation and Commonwealth.